Good evening, everyone. The meeting of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Carr?
Present.
Director O'Halloran?
Here.
Director Peterson?
Present.
Director Taylor?
In attendance.
Chair Herndon?
Present.
We have 5 present.
The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. This meeting is being conducted in person from the Central Services Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Thank you. For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Those who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register to speak in advance of the start of the meeting. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. I ask that those who are waiting to speak virtually to remain on the platform until you're called to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the Chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to the governance at milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictate that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, committee members, or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. Please be respectful of the democratic process adhered to by the board for the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting. Harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone persisting in disrupting this process will be asked to leave or will be escorted from the meeting and not allowed to return. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. Also, no one other than members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, or after the meetings of the board and its committees. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, You may do so by visiting the Meetings, Agendas, and Minutes page on the MPS website and choosing Online Agendas. Now, let's begin, Madam Secretary. Item 1.
Item number 1 is action on monthly personnel matters, action on the classified personnel transactions, action on the certificated appointments, action on leaves of absence, the report on certificated resignations and classified retirements, and the affirmative action report. The administration recommends that the board approve the promotions, appointments, and leaves as listed in the attachments to this item to be effective upon board approval.
Would the administration please present this item?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, we are asking for your approval of the monthly personnel and reporting items before you. Adria Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, is here with me this evening, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Seeing no one, do we have any members of the public, Madam Secretary, that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director O'Halloran.
I move approval of the promotions, appointments, and leaves as listed in the attachments.
Is there further discussion? If not, will the Secretary please call the roll?
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the monthly personnel matters. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Taylor.
Aye.
Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 2, action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. The administration recommends that the board, 1, authorize the individuals to be promoted, reassigned, or reclassified to receive the decreases or increases in salary, and be appointed to the classifications indicated in the attachment to this item to be effective upon board approval as indicated. And 2, approve the limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days pursuant to Administrative Policy 6.23, Parent 4, Parent B, to be effective as indicated in the attachment.
Would the administration please present this item?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, we are requesting your approval of this item as it outlines this month administrative appointments, promotion, reclassification, salary adjustments, and LTE contracts. Adria Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, is here with me this evening, and we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Seeing no one, Madam Secretary, are there members of the public that wish to make comments or ask questions?
Madam Chair, we have received no request for public testimony on this item.
Director Carr.
Question for clarity. There is a name listed under recommended appointments, and that name is also mentioned under LTE contracts. Is that, can you explain or walk me through that so I'll understand?
Okay. Administration, may you answer that, please?
Chair Herndon, Director Carr, Adria Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, the individual, she had the ability to start sooner than when her appointment would come forward to the board, because we do have a lag time for people to appointments. So we were able to bring her in as a LTE, get her in quicker that way, and then we will be transferring her effective tomorrow to a full-time position.
Thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up? Director Carr? Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director Peterson? Okay, is there further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Peterson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and
be limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. On the motion as read into the record, Director Carr?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Peterson? Director Taylor?
Aye.
And Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, there's been a special request to move item 8 in position of item 3.
So noted.
So, would you go to item 8, please?
Item number 8 is action on a request to approve a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation, Inc., formalizing the relationship between Milwaukee Public Schools and the MPS Foundation. The recommendation is that the board authorize the attached MOU with the Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation as listed in the attachments to this item.
Thank you. Would administration please present this item?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, this evening, the administration is requesting the board's approval of the request for an MOU with the MPS Foundation. Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, is here with me to share this item. Adria.
Chair Herndon, members of the committee, Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. In 1997, the MPS Foundation was established, and the district has enjoyed a very successful and fruitful relationship with the foundation since that time. In the spirit of transparency, we thought it was important that we document and outline the day-to-day relationship between the district and the foundation. And we wanted to bring it forward for your approval, so then we have clarity and there is an understanding on both party sides of what our responsibilities are.
Thank you very much. Are there anyone else that wish to speak from administration on this?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, no, that completes our presentation.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions on this item? Director Peterson.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank the people who put this together. Obviously, the foundation has been really very important for a lot of schools, a lot of projects that we have, and it only makes sense that we formalize this. I actually had a question that was a little tangential, but it's if you could look at item number 12 that says school funds. I'm curious. It says the foundation may establish and maintain designated restricted funds specifically for individual schools, which at their discretion shall develop their own school funds. Donations designed for such schools will be maintained in a separate fund and administered pursuant to the endowment agreement between the individual school fund board chair and the foundation, and countersigned by the schools for acknowledgement of purposes. My question is, I'm not familiar with school fund board chairs. Is that are we setting up boards? I mean, I know there's some schools that have specific funds in the foundation. I know there's a bunch of schools who want to become that way, but are we requiring each school then to have a board and have somebody in charge of it?
Administration.
Chair Herndon, Director Peterson, members of the committee, Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. I do not believe it's our intent to create a board at every school. I think this is some language, just if then what we may need to do out of protection, but I will defer to anyone else that may have more detailed information on the school funds.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
members of the committee, the foundation actually has certain positions that that oversee certain accounts like the school account. So in this situation, if there was a donation for a specific school, those funds would be governed by the individual who is managing the school's account, who belongs to the foundation, to ensure that the funds that are designated for that specific school would be allocated to the school that's identified attached to any funding.
Any follow-up? Or you want to
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
more from
just
administration?
I think, for example, if I'm not mistaken, Maryland Avenue has a active relationship with the foundation. And that's great. I know other schools would like to do so, but I think it's unclear, and it would be worth us institutionalizing a procedure by which, okay, X school wants to start a school fund, and it's more than just saying that the foundation will sort of keep track of what it is. It's I don't know, it seems that there are a lot of schools who want to raise their own money, but, I mean, and I guess then the next question is, okay, say if you do a bake sale or something, that money just goes to the school itself directly. We're not bothering, but if a school's trying to get a grant or something like that, that would go through the foundation.
Administration.
Madam Chair, committee members, Nick Sinner, I'm Assistant City Attorney. You're exactly right, Chair Peterson, that is correct. Any funds that are tied with restrictions, either from grantors or private donors, would go to these specific school funds. The terms would be often set by donors or the grantor. I completely agree. It would be great to create a standard operating procedure about how schools can have clarity to be able to establish those funds. I do think it'd be most appropriate for that to be on the foundation side, as they are a separate organization, but we can certainly bring that up with the foundation. I think they'd be more than happy to assist with that. And to your second question, you're absolutely correct. The kind of locally raised funds would be separate from and not necessarily required to go into these school funds. So I think you summed it up very well.
Thank you very much. I look forward to letting people know how that's going to be, and I'm sure there'll be all the more energy now that we have publicized it.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Members of the committee, and just to piggyback off of what Nick is saying about the grants. And so if a school were to apply for a grant in its typical format and not through the foundation, those funds would not be governed by the foundation. However, if a grantor or a philanthropic organization wanted to grant the school funds, those are the funds that would be attached to exactly what President Peterson is saying relative to the governing of those funds with the foundation.
Thank you. Are there any more comments by board members? Director Taylor?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. How does what we're looking at now, is this like more an amendment, or how does it differentiate from what was in place before?
Administration.
Madam Chair, committee members, Nick Sinner, I'm Assistant City Attorney. So this would supplement the bylaws, which are like the chartering documents for the organization. As kind of the relationship has gone on and the developed and become more and more professional, we've just discovered ways in which the bylaws needed to be supplemented. And so this would be a new agreement. It's not an amendment to the bylaws, but would supplement and clarify the relationship.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Yes. So this isn't new, like, this is new, but it's not in addition to the bylaws, so it would not cancel out the bylaws, but it's going to override anything that we had in place before, so this becomes the new term. Basically, this is what we will abide by, correct?
Correct, and it shouldn't conflict and does not conflict with bylaws, so it doesn't necessarily override anything, but is in addition and supplements. You're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
more?
No, I mean, it does kind of override, but thank you.
Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I would just Well, I'll move approval of this item, but I also just wanted to welcome if the foundation ever wanted to come give the board an update about some of the work that they're doing and how the public can get involved. I would welcome that conversation because I know they're doing a lot of really great things, and we just welcomed a new executive director. So with that, I would be happy to move approval of administration's recommendation with regards to this MOU.
Are there any more comments by board directors? Okay, Mr. Chason.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chason, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. The MOU provides details on the management and supervision of loaned MPS staff to the foundation, and also provides some details on the ownership of certain risk management functions. I was wondering if the Assistant City Attorney could weigh in and maybe provide some additional insights on those components within the MOU.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, are there members of the public that wish to make oh, I'm sorry. Administration, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, committee members, happy to answer that question. So I was involved with negotiating this with the foundation's representative attorney. Matt is correct. Those are probably the two highlights. Is that the contract, I guess, apportions risk amongst the relationship in terms specifically of loaned employees and what was the second part of the question? And risk management. And so the foundation was, as always, very generous in negotiating the agreement and has accepted the risk of those employees, if there should be a situation arise that there's either an employment dispute, a personal injury, some sort of tort, any sort of claim. And so that is, I guess, one of the key things for you to know. And thanks for the question, Matt.
Are there any more comments from committee? None from administration? Okay. Madam Secretary, are there members of the public that wish to make comments or ask questions?
For public testimony on this item.
Thank you. We have a motion, so if there's not further discussion, will the Secretary please call the roll?
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the Memorandum of Understanding with the Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation, Inc., formalizing the relationship between the Milwaukee Public Schools and the foundation. On the motion as read into the record, Director Carr?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Peterson?
Aye.
Director Taylor?
Aye.
Chair Herndon?
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, the next item will be number 3.
Yes, Madam Chair. Item number 3 is action on the resolution 2223R-15 by Director Garcia to direct a review of the 3-tier busing system. The recommendation is that the board approve the resolution as attached to direct a review of the 3-tier busing model that's outlined in the attachment to this item.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we want to connect with Director Garcia at this point?
Yes, Madam Chair. Director Garcia is online. Director Garcia, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Well, first of all, thank you, Chairwoman Herndon, and to the Office of Board Governance for facilitating me being able to speak on this long distance. But the resolution before you proposes the review of the impacts of the 3-tier busing to the 8 schools that move from Tier 1 to Tier 3 busing model. That includes Milwaukee Sign Language School, Rantosa, Carson, Hartford, View, Burbank, Manitoba, and Humboldt Park. So to set this into context, in 2020, the board at the time adopted a policy that changed the bell schedule to 8 schools in our district, with 1 from each of the 8 districts that compose MPS to be impacted. So that means, to the administration's credit, a lot of work and data analysis went into the decision-making to select the 8 schools. And we identified an area for cost savings that would have, in theory, very little impact on the delivery of services. However, due to the pandemic, something that began as a cost-saving strategy for the district became a strategy that would ultimately help us better manage the national driver shortage that we saw. However, because of the pandemic, the planned convenings and communication with each school community were halted, and simply our plan was not followed as originally planned. So all students at the time were virtual, so the conversations never quite materialized. So for District 6, which is, my district, La Escuela View, was the school that was impacted within District 6. So I have met with school leadership, with parents, hosted a town hall meeting, and held space for us to hear directly from the parents and students that were impacted. However, it's now been 3 years since the implementation of this policy, and my resolution invites you to for us to take a closer look at what the impacts of our decisions had not just for Escuela View, but for all of the 8 schools that had that drastic change from 7:30 start time to 9 o'clock start time. So I'm interested in just digging a little deeper into the data that's going to help us better support the schools that have been navigating these changes. So this resolution invites administration to work with the Office of Accountability and Efficiency to review the impacts of the tier changes in the 8 schools selected for the bell schedule change and report back to the board in June of 2023 with the recommendations to follow. So I urge, my peers to be in support of this resolution so that we can be better allies and stewards of, the impact that our decisions have made within the communities that we serve.
Thank you very much. Administration.
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, on February 23rd of 2023, Resolution 2223R-015 by Director Garcia to direct a review of the 3-tier busing was referred to the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. This evening, the administration is prepared to accept the resolution, and I have with me David Farrick, Senior Director of Transportation Services, and together we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. And also just to let you know that we have already started this work.
Thank you. Mr. Farrick.
Chair Herndon, members of the committee, David Farrick, Director of Business and Transportation Services. I understand the intent of this resolution, fully support the collaborative efforts to kind of evaluate the circumstances around the 3-tier and the impacts that may have been realized. And we've been working with Mr. Chasen's office already and plan to kind of expand that collaboration to bring back to the board some feedback and perhaps some recommendations. I can answer any questions you might have, of course.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to ask questions? Director O'Halloran?
Thank you, Chair Herndon. If Director Garcia would be okay with it, I would ask to be a co-sponsor. I have had, to this day, my one school is, some parents, some teachers are still reaching out to me about it. So I definitely support this. And if Director Garcia would be okay with it, I would love to be a co-sponsor, and I would move approval of the resolution.
Thank you very much. Director Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. I will almost ask to be a co-sponsor, but it looked like the report would come back past my time. I still get calls as well too, and I don't, because I know Dr. Mann will bring me back if I go over. In reference to the 3-tier busing, I will be tuning in, looking forward to what's happening. I just had like 3 calls this week in reference of busing, some from bus drivers and then some from parents. So I know we are still working diligently on this, but there are still like some hiccups that are happening that needs to happen. And also when I get the call from the bus drivers, and maybe this is administration or transportation that needs to talk with the bus companies, for some reason they think that they are like more employees of MPS, not that they are contracted. And so I'm often telling them they need to talk to the bus company from some other issues, that MPS is contracting with that company. So I think that's something that we need to make clear. I often think people in the community don't understand it too. They feel like MPS is over the bus companies, not that we're contracting with those individuals a lot of times too. But I'm looking forward to seeing what will be some of the suggestions and strategies for the 3-tier busing. I know I was one of those individuals that did not vote for it. Not that I didn't believe it could work, I just saw some of the other elements of challenges. So I'm hoping in the future that it is something that in comparison, not only saves us money, but also works more efficiently and effectively when we're working within these schools that are some on the same tier, but versus having to have 3 different times. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Director Peterson.
Yes, I completely support this resolution. I appreciate Director Garcia for pulling it together. The one thing I would ask the administration to include is to also look at the impact it's had on schools that were already in on the late schedule, and then put in the third tier. Because what I hear is that some of those schools are still getting buses very late, and that causes, staff to have to be on staff an extra half hour, 45 minutes. And it's not that they need to necessarily, we just have to figure out a better way to try to get all the buses there on time, because it has an impact on the finances and the staffing at the schools. So if that could just be included, I know that what the 8 schools had a dramatic change. These other schools had maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, but they still have some issues that would be worth looking at. So,
Any more remarks? Madam Secretary, I'd like to pass the gavel to the co-chair, please.
So noted.
Gavel received.
Thank you. I think that all of us have had phone calls and complaints about this 3-tier system. For me, I've gotten lots of calls about the buses being extremely late in the 3rd tier specifically. And also, River Trail is scheduled to go to citywide. They were already complaining from day one when I got on the board. They were complaining that the 3rd tier was not working well for them. They had originally been on the early or the 1st tier, and then they got moved to the 3rd tier. And in that they've got the new designation, which probably we expect it to increase the pupil count significantly. So that means that their problems are going to increase. So I would ask that you definitely include them in the list of schools, because right now they are 3rd tier and they really would prefer to go back to tier 1.
Administration? Any questions, comments?
Chair Carr, members of the committee, yes, we will make sure that we include River Trail in that, but and I'm going to follow up with David here. They will have a change anyway if they're going to citywide status for the upcoming year. Could you comment on that, please?
Chair Carr, Director Herndon, members of the committee, David Pfeiffer, Director of Business Transportation. River Trail had moved, they were on a later tier prior to the move of the 3-tier system. They might have been a change a few years prior to that. They weren't part of the 8 schools, but obviously have had some impacts with the 3rd tier. I've got a lot of comments related to that. I'll save it for when we kind of formalize this, and I can talk through some suggestions there, and been really thinking through that all year, obviously, already. But with them being in citywide, it does have some potential impacts. Obviously, we're going to have to increase the number of buses that we're going to have to that school, and we can probably make some suggestions. It comes, a lot of this, and I know we don't necessarily want to hear about this now, but it does sometimes boil down to finances. The more we move to 1st tiers, the more buses we need to have, and to some degree, it might exacerbate some of the issues that we had kind of just got passed for the most part. So maybe some of the suggestion would be, depending upon the school type, is there a trade, right? And nobody wants to hear that, but that is kind of sometimes the trade-off in terms of the school types, because you have some challenges with Milwaukee being a big rectangle, for lack of a better word. It's far north to far south to far north, and knowing where River Trail is, becoming citywide could be problematic if they end up enrolling kids from Fifth and Layton, the areas of the far southeast side of Milwaukee. So I would not, I just would caution too much movement in their school bell schedule because of that. But like I said, I can bring back some recommendations if we were to consider moving them to another tier, what that might look like and what the cost component would be.
Chair Herndon?
Thank you very much. In addition to that is the fact that for my district, I get a lot of phone calls with even the early tiers, which is the high school, a lot of the high schools from the far northwest side, and them not being able to get to school on time. That not getting to school on time seems to be a severe problem for the northwest side. And I get it. It's the northwest side, and the kids are going like to School of the Arts. Excuse me. Another one was Golda was a problem as well. And of course, many of the parents complained about the elementary schools being some of those being on the first tier or something, and that would being too early. So my question is, I know that there was discussion about the high school kids can sleep later. There was a conversation along those lines. What type of conversation do we have along those lines in our plans for the future, for next year, whatever? Are we still looking at the high school kids primarily getting the late or third tier? Or how do you plan to do it as of today?
Administration?
Chair Carr, Director Herndon, members of the committee, David Pfeifferich. I think there's been a little bit of a theme in a lot of the feedback that we're getting from families or teachers that a lot of it revolves around the older the student, the easier it is for them to be on a later tier for some of the discussion that we're having here. I know that we, at the board floor a couple of years ago, we did talk about the national movement in a lot of respects to high schoolers no earlier than 8:30 in the case of California and other places around the country. So we did try to implement that as one of the strategies to try, there was a significant amount of schools that were prior to the three-tier system at the high school level were getting to school at 7:15, 7:20. So we did try to push them back without having dramatic impacts. And, we talk about the 8 schools and the significant change from first tier to third tier. We did throw around a couple different scenarios that would have potentially impacted more than those 8 schools, which not only impacts the kids that are on transportation, but it impacts the students that are not on transportation. And so I think it will come back, I think, with some of those reasonings so that we can really unpack that a little bit and say this is why these schools were chose. It wasn't just because of those, there was one school in each zone. It had to do with the type of school that it was, where the demographics were. It had to do with the fact that we were trying to minimize the 140 other schools' collective impact. And, a good chunk of these schools had to do with the high bus population, because again, if you've got 500 kids and 50 of them use the bus, if you move them a whole bell schedule or two, 450 students that don't use the bus are impacted, and that felt to be a little bit more problematic from an evaluation standpoint. If we were going to make a change based on busing, it would have hopefully impacted the bus population more than the non-bus population. But I do think there is a place for having continued discussions about middle and high schools being on a later tier, but that comes with things, opportunity costs like athletics and the lights and all of the issues that come with high school students getting out later. And then, of course, the elementary schools then would be on an earlier tier. So I think we might need to have the athletic commissioner and some folks kind of speak to the impacts there, just to make sure we don't solve one problem and cause another.
Any follow-up?
Yes. The other thing, too, that I hear a lot is the fact that with the little ones that start the third tier, they're getting home so late in the evening and in the wintertime, typically after dark. So it sounds like it would be better for the older students to be the one that would be getting home at 4:30 or 5, but then you're mentioning the sports after school would be impacted in that situation too. So I support this item, and the discussion definitely needs to continue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Take the
I'll
gavel
take-
back.
Thank you. So with that, we've heard from administration, we've heard from committee. Madam Secretary, are there any members of the public that wish to make comments or ask questions?
Madam Chair, just so that we remember, Director Garcia is online, but we have no additional individuals looking to speak on this item tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, so I just wanted to respond to Director O'Halloran's request to be a co-sponsor of this. Please join us in this resolution, Director O'Halloran. More than happy to include you in that work, and really looking forward to, working with Mr. Fairfax and Mr. Chasen, just to expand this conversation and really dig deep into what it means to serve now that, the landscape is changing and changing really quickly for us to adapt to what those needs are.
Thank you so much. With that, Madam Secretary, are there any members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no additional public testimony on this item.
Thank you. With that, what is the pleasure of the committee?
Madam Chair,
Director-
we do have a motion
Oh, that's
by
right, we
Director
do.
O'Halloran.
We talk so much after your motion. Okay, with that, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve Resolution 2223R-15 by Director Garcia to direct a review of the three-tier busing system. On the motion as read, Director Carr?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Peterson?
Aye.
Director Taylor? Aye. And Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 4, which is action on a request to discontinue the MPS COVID-19 testing program. The recommendation is that the board approve the ending of the on-site COVID-19 testing for students and staff and discontinuing the requirement that the unvaccinated staff with accommodations be tested for COVID-19 twice a week, and that would be effective May 1st of 2023.
Would the administration please present this item?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, this evening, the administration is requesting the board's approval for the recommendation to discontinue the MPS COVID-19 testing program. Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, is here with me, and she's going to share out on this item, after which we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have. Adria.
Thank you, Chair Herndon, members of the committee, Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. Since the start of the 21-22 school year, MPS has participated in the Wisconsin Department of Health Services COVID-19 school testing program. Through the program, DHS has covered all the costs associated with COVID testing in our schools and our buildings. Specifically, they've covered the cost of the test kits, the lab processing, and any of the staff costs related to administering the tests on site in our buildings. On January 27th of this year, we were notified by DHS that they are discontinuing their testing program effective May 1st of this year. Therefore, if we want to continue testing after the end of April, the district would have to cover all costs associated with the testing moving forward. In light of financial burden of continuing testing and the current trends regarding hospitalizations and deaths related to COVID-19, the administration is recommending that the district discontinue providing COVID-19 testing effective May 1st, and additionally, that the board eliminate the requirement that unvaccinated staff with accommodations get tested twice a week for COVID-19.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? I'm seeing none. Madam Secretary, do we have members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
What is the pleasure of the committee with respect, Director Peterson?
I move, excuse me, I move acceptance of the administration's proposal to end the testing on May 1st and to end the requirement for people to be tested if they have not been vaccinated.
Okay, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Peterson's motion to move approval of the administration's recommendation relative to the discontinuance of the MPS COVID-19 testing program and process as outlined in the item. Director Carr.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Taylor.
Aye.
Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 5, which is action on the monthly facilities matters. The FMS awards of construction and professional services contracts, materials purchases, contract modifications, exception to bid, and the acceptance of the air quality report. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached construction and professional services contracts, the material purchases, the contract modification and exception to bid as presented in the attachment, and 2, accept the air quality reports.
Thank you. Would administration please present this item?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, we are asking for your approval of this monthly facilities matters items related to awards on construction and professional services contracts, contracts modifications, exceptions to bid, and the air quality report. I have Sean Kane here with me this evening to give the air quality report. Sean.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Good evening, Chair Herndon, members of the committee. Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. I'll provide an air quality update. As mentioned in the previous report, DFMS is continuing to work with 4 current integrated project delivery contractors, IPD teams for short, that were approved in July of 2021. Our DFMS team has been working with our contracted owner's representative, Concord, and I asked them to provide me a summary of activities through February of 2023. After IPD contractors identified project goals and critical objectives during the later part of 2021, scopes related to air quality were defined after reviewing school information, site investigations, and checking the DFMS deferred maintenance list. Contracts were based on IPD cost estimates within their school assignments. The IPD teams, the owner's representative, and DFMS has been meeting weekly to discuss budget, schedule, and address any outstanding scope concerns. The IPD teams have finished design and construction documents to solicit formal and competitive bids for ESSER 2 projects from their subcontractors conforming to the requirements in Board Policy 3.09. Our team has finalized most ESSER 2 project budgets after receiving all bids by the end of December, but need to revisit some bids due to cost concerns and value engineering. Minimal number of rebids continue to come in for testing and balancing, water bottle stations, flooring, outdoor classrooms, bug screens, and mechanical projects. We plan to utilize allocated contingency to address cost overruns in the unpredictable market or any additional deferred maintenance projects that we can move forward. Fortunately, we've seen construction costs go up about 15 to 20% as of late. Therefore, it is starting to become a balancing act of what scope related to capital improvements can be done with ESSER 2 funds, and some improvements may have to be absorbed into ESSER 3 funds. Concurrently, IPD contractors have been working on mechanical projects, bug screens, flooring installations, outdoor classrooms, water bottle stations that address air quality. The team had to be creative due to the aggressive schedule of ESSER 2 deadlines to continue scope performance. In addition, DFMS and the owner's representative have been working with IPD teams to identify long lead time items such as bug screens and flooring product to purchase so we can expedite construction schedule through September of 23. Efforts to get testing and balancing done on mechanical projects is well underway, and 45% of the sites are complete or in progress. Once reports are generated, we continue to address any potential deficiencies in the mechanical systems to improve the air quality. For bottle stations, 50% of the sites are complete or in progress. Flooring projects, 50% of the sites are complete or in progress. Outdoor classrooms, 45% of the sites are complete or in progress. For bug screens, 40% of the sites are complete or in progress. As for the mass quantity of projects going on across the district, despite being an ESSER 2 or 3 project, DFMS, the owner's representative, and the IPD contractors have been in constant touch with school leaders to coordinate and schedule all efforts within the school buildings. This is extremely important as ESSER 2 projects related to air quality continue to finish up, will more likely have an impact on ESSER 3 projects that include other capital projects, additions, remodeling, painting, or other school requested scopes. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Director Taylor.
Thank you for that. What's the district's DBA policy in reference to contracts?
Excuse me. Sorry, Chair Herndon, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director, Facilities Maintenance Services. Disadvantaged Business Act, I mean, those are some of the assignments that we have through Contract Compliance Services. I mean, there's also WB, MB, I mean, there's all those, certifications that you can apply through the state. But yeah, the DBA is Disadvantaged Business.
Thank you. Follow up, please.
Yeah, thank you. And then I saw Matt Chasen, so I defer. And also, we have percentages in reference to aligning with the DBA on our contracts.
Chair Herndon, members of the committee, yes, we have across both ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 projects, there's a 25% percentage assignment that they have to meet. They could be, utilizing any of the certified agencies, MBA, DBA, et cetera.
Thank you. Mr. Chasen.
Thank you, Chair Herndon. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. So what Sean said was exactly right on construction contracts. There are specific requirements that get set for other professional service contracts. It's a function of examining opportunity that exists in the marketplace. So there's a review of opportunity within the marketplace, and we set assignments accordingly. So if the marketplace would support as high as a 10% participation on professional services, that's the assignment we set. If it's as high as 20% opportunity, then that's what we set. But construction is generally fixed.
Any follow-up?
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome. Director Peterson.
Yes, I just want to take the time to thank Sean and his whole team in facilities and maintenance and all the contractors they're having. I think it's after this is all done, they're going to be experts in juggling and maybe go into circus, Hopefully, this is not what it becomes, but anyway, thank you very much. I know that it's with 160-some buildings, it's a lot of work that we have in front of us and seems to be going well.
Thank you very much. Are there any more directors that wish to speak? Okay. Madam Secretary, are there members of the public that wish to make comments?
Public testimony on this item?
What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director Carr?
Approval of the item with the administration's recommendations.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Carr's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the monthly facilities matters. On the motion as read, Director Carr?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Peterson?
Aye.
Director Taylor?
Aye.
Chair Herndon?
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 6, which is action on monthly facilities matters, authorization to make purchases, the report on change orders in excess of $25,000, acceptance of the report on revenues and expenses, the monthly expenditure control report, the report on the contracts under $50,000 and their cumulative totals, and the acceptance of donations.
Thank
The
you.
recommendation is that the board authorize the purchases and accept the donations as listed in the attachments to this item with appropriate acknowledgement to be made on behalf of the board.
Thank you. Would administration please present this item?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, this evening, we're asking your approval of the monthly finance matters before you. Rochelle Johnson-Bent, Manager of Procurement and Risk Management, is here with me this evening, and together we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to ask questions or make comments? Director Carr?
I will have to recuse myself due to the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Thank you very much. Anyone else with comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, are there members of the public that wish to make comments or ask questions?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director O'Halloran?
I move approval of the purchases as attached and accept the donations as listed in the attachments with gratitude from the district and the board.
Okay. Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director O'Halloran's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the monthly finance matters as outlined in the attachment to this item. And just so that there's a record, Director Carr has recused herself from consideration of this item. On the motion as read, Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Taylor,
Aye.
Chair Herndon.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, 1 recusal. The motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 7, action on the award of exception to bid contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the exception to bid contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Thank you. Administration, please present this item.
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, we're asking for your approval of this month's exception to bid contracts. The team is here with me this evening, and between the three of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director O'Halloran.
Can administration walk us through a little bit about the Ed Blocks online instruction, please?
Administration.
Chair Herndon, Director O'Halloran, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The Ed Blocks is Elevate K-12, and they provide online teaching so that we have coverage in all our classrooms while we have staff that is in person in the classroom to help.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Thank you. At some point, would I be able to get detail about how many students this serves and just if there's like which schools we're using this in, et cetera, just to get more detail about it?
Chair Herndon and members of the committee, we'll be more than happy to provide to the board, prior to the full board, a list of the schools that currently we have Elevate K-12 in this year, as well as a number of students that are that's taking classes through Elevate K-12.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on committee? Madam Secretary, are there members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Okay, will we need a motion at this point from committee? Director Taylor? Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Taylor's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the award of exception to bid contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item. Director Carr?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Peterson?
Aye.
Director Taylor?
Aye.
Chair Herndon?
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, as you have dispensed with item number 8, which is the last item on this agenda, that completes all of the items for tonight's agenda.
There being no further business before this committee, this meeting is adjourned.